Come on in to the first draft QB room. Mel Kiper Jr. and me, Field Yates, are breaking down the best quarterback prospects in the 2026 NFL draft class. That is coming up. Plus, we're responding to your questions, your takes, and your draft dreams live as first draft starts right now. Welcome back into First Draft. You know him already. He is Mel Kiper Jr. He is an NFL on ESPN YouTube channel sensation. I am Field Yates. We're available today on ESPN2, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. Mel, what's happening, my friend?
I'll tell you what, quarterbacks front and center today. They always are, Field. You talk about what it means in the National Football League. It's the most important position in all of sports. And we have 7 guys, Field. 7. Yeah. Okay, there could end up being QB1 if you take Arch Manning out. And we know Arch Manning's 1, right? That's no surprise. But will he prove to be as good as advertised and live up to the hype? So there's going to be a lot of fascinating storylines developing with all these quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, we're diving into not just the top quarterbacks you need to know today, but also the teams. And not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but to get very far ahead of ourselves. We're taking a look at some of the teams that might be in the quarterback market next year, Mel. Teams that could be like where the Titans were and where the Browns were and other teams at the top of the draft board, the New York Giants, were this past April. A reminder, though, from now until New Year's Day, First Draft is with you every Wednesday at noon on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel, as well as on ESPN2 later that day. You might see us on ESPN News occasionally. We're all over the map. And for all of our breakdowns so far this season, and this is episode 3, scan that QR code, which is on your screen, to access the entire YouTube playlist. We've already broken down some of the most intriguing players for the draft this year, Mel, some of the best. But we're going to go and we're going to do our top 5 quarterbacks. And Mel, I was thinking about this. I think the way to go about it is sort of present strengths and limitations, maybe areas to grow this year for these players, but also acknowledging, Mel, that this would be like sketching like doing a piece of artwork and only doing the outline, right? Like there's so much more to fill out. Do not consider these rankings etched in stone by any stretch. This is a starting point. I want people to hear that loud and clearly because things are going to change a lot by next April, Mel. Heck, we could do this episode again in 2 months and feel entirely differently about some of these players. But let's begin, Mel. You and I both see the same quarterback at the very top of the board. And I want to introduce this topic, Mel. Arch Manning. He might not come out next year, Mel. His grandfather, Archie Manning, recently told, I believe it was Texas Monthly, that he thinks he will stay at Texas for 2 seasons, Mel. I think a lot of people in the scouting community have sensed that same thing from Arch Manning. We don't know for sure, Mel. I am going to continue to rank him until he makes a final decision about whether he will stay or whether he will go, because if he has a Heisman Trophy level season and a team that he would be interested in playing for has the number 1 pick in the draft, might that be enough to persuade him to come out after 1 year? We shall see. Where do you stand on whether you're going to rank Arch throughout the process, Mel, or is today the last time we talk about him and you're putting him to bed after this episode?
Well, it's really still to be determined, but we put him number 1 because we almost have to. It's Arch Manning. We saw glimpses last year of the greatness he could provide that Texas offense, right? Running the football. He's got great legs. Cooper Manning, his father, was a wide receiver until he got injured. He wasn't a quarterback. So he's got speed, something Eli and Peyton didn't have. Okay, so he can run. He can elude. He showed that against Texas San Antonio. He showed it against Mississippi State. What he was able to do throwing the football at all levels, the arm strength, the touch he showed. So we're looking ahead to what he could be, but we don't know if he will develop into that because he only has 95 career pass attempts. Think about that. We're talking about a guy, number 1 quarterback consensus, 95 career pass attempts, right? Okay, only 12 pass attempts after October 1st last year. Garrett Nussmeier, just throw a quarterback out there that we're going to be talking about from LSU. He had over 95 pass attempts in 2 games last year. Yeah. So we're talking about limited sample size, but the talent level from what we saw in high school to what we saw glimpses of last year in those 3 football games, 2 of which were starts, shows us that Arch Manning, who's 21, he'll be 22 after the draft around April 27th of this coming year, right?
Yeah.
3rd year in the program, not his 1st or 2nd, but this is his 3rd year in the program. They will probably tell him to go back because there's not enough starts. But for right now, you got to put him 1. But still, to be determined, I guess, is next to Arch Manning because, as he said, and I give him a lot of credit for this, he's a mature young man. He gets it. He said, hey, I haven't done anything yet. They're talking about me with all these great quotes and great expectations. I haven't proven anything yet. But guess what? Texas is loaded, and they are right there to maybe be a national championship winner, national championship contender, forget that. They could win it all this year. Arch Manning's the key to that whole program.
Yeah, Mel, totally agree on that. And by the way, before people get mad at us and say, again, his grandfather said he's going to likely stay at Texas for 2 more seasons, and both of his uncles, Eli and Peyton Manning, saw it all the way through their 4 years at Tennessee and Ole Miss. I understand that, but if the Texas Longhorns, who, by the way, #1 team in the preseason AP poll, win the national championship game this season. And by the way, Arch Manning is the straw that stirs the drink and wins the Heisman, or has this highly successful season. And by the way, maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there, Matt, we'll talk about it more later, the New Orleans Saints, who might or might not be his hometown team, have the #1 pick in the draft. I think it's at least possible that he would discuss the idea of coming out for the 2026 NFL draft. Some of the good from Arch, you laid it out there. This guy he has excellent accuracy, Mel, right? No surprise there. He is a Manning. One of the hallmark traits of Peyton Manning especially, but both Manning brothers, was their pristine accuracy. The difference between Arch and his uncles, Mel, is that he's an athlete, right? This guy can really run. He can really impact the game with his legs. I wanted to share a story that I was thinking about, Mel, because this was last year when Arch wasn't even eligible to come out for the draft, nor was he playing much with Quinn Ewers as Texas' starting quarterback. But somebody who was down there visiting from the NFL scouting world told me, he said, I've never seen a player with the same practice habits that Arch has. And Arch wasn't even the starting quarterback at the time, right? He said he was so focused. He was so dialed in. Every rep mattered to Arch Manning, which perhaps that is like what it's like growing up in a family of professional football players. His grandfather, his 2 uncles, his brother, his father, of course, a very talented wide receiver, Cooper Manning, in his own right before an injury derailed his career. But on top of the really good physical stuff here, Mel, there is the intangibles that I think will be very, very intriguing for teams surrounding Arch Manning. I think he needs to fill out his frame a little bit, Mel, but it's pretty easy to see how this guy could be the #1 pick in the draft, whether it's next year or the year after.
Well, keep in mind, August 30th, high noon, right?
Yep.
We love the high noon kickoffs.
Yeah.
At the shoe, at the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes with a restructured defense, new coordinator, right? Who do you think it is? Matt Patricia, right? Coming in. Jim Knowles is at Penn State now. Highest paid defensive coordinator Knowles leaves Ohio State to go to Penn State. So new coordinator and Matt Patricia has those 3 Super Bowl rings from New England, right? And you got a defense that lost just about everybody except Sonny Styles, linebacker, Caleb Downs, a great safety who could be a top-5 pick, and Davidson Mendoza in the corner. Now, you think about Texas. They're going into the shoe with this talent-laden offense, talent-laden defense. I think they're going to be expected to beat Ohio State, but this Ohio State team figuring out their quarterback, who's it going to be? They don't know yet. Bottom line is, this is all eyes, high noon, August 30th, at the shoe at Ohio State in Columbus, Ohio, will be on the Ohio State Buckeyes hosting the Texas Longhorns and Arch Manning. What a game that should be. And for Arch Manning, let's see how he handles the expectations, the pressure. This Ohio State team's got a lot of pride. And they're here, hey, we're the underdog. Texas is going to come in here and just run us off our own field. We got us all new defense. We got new offensive players all over the place. A new quarterback. What's going to happen there? That's going to be one of the more interesting games of the year, how Arch Manning deals with that kind of pressure.
2 notes, Mel. This surprised me that Texas is ranked first in the AP poll to begin the season for the first time ever. This never happened before, so a testament to what Arch not only brings to the table, but to how loaded this team is. Make no mistake about it. There is a ton of talent, both guys returning from last year's roster and also some new talent because we are now in the transfer portal era. 2, at least as of right now, Ohio State, believe it or not, favored in that game. Ohio State, according to the ESPN bet, 2.5-point favorites. Ohio State, the 3rd ranked team in the preseason poll, despite the fact that they have some question marks surrounding who's going to be their starting quarterback. All right, so we see quarterback 1, the same here, Mel. Quarterback 2 is South Carolina quarterback LaNorris Sellers. Here's some of the important stats from last year. 2,534 passing yards, 18 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 647 rushing yards, plus 7 rushing touchdowns, Mel. What else do people need to know about LaNorris Sellers as a player?
He's the LTPer. He looks the part. You look at Josh Allen, LaNorris Sellers is that guy. And I think the improvement that you saw from early on to the latter half of the season and running the football, he had some big-time impressive performances running the football. That ball in his hands, how he can scare the heck out of a defense and beat a defense with his legs. LaNorris Sellers is the ultimate dual-threat quarterback. And I think the consistency throwing the football kept improving. He had some games where accuracy wasn't an issue. I mean, he was over 70% in a lot of games. All about what he was in some of the big games. When he was needed to come through, he did. So I think you look at him, keep building on what we saw the latter half of last year. I got the numbers right here. Yep. First 6 games, 5 touchdowns, 4 picks. Last 6 games, 13 touchdowns, only 3 picks, okay? 70% or higher, as I said, in 6 games last year. The talent's in abundance. He's only 20 years of age. He doesn't turn 21 until June 23rd. So if he's drafted, it would be a 20-year-old draft choice coming into the NFL. That's it. So LaNorris Sellers, quarterback South Carolina, if you had to draw up physically and athletically the prototypical NFL quarterback, it would be him.
Yeah, LaNorris Sellers is Mr. Upside in this draft, right? The number of just, oh my goodness, plays that he made last year, I thought surpassed every other quarterback that I studied in this year's, meaning 2026 draft class, and probably close to as many as any quarterback from last year's draft class, only behind Cam Ward, who of course was remarkable for Miami last season. Sellers, I think the in-pocket stuff, Mel, is borderline special, right? He has the ability, because of his body armor, to take on these pass rushers that are coming at him full speed, and he can brace for contact, take contact, and find his way out of contact. When you and I did our opening show, we said the body type reminds you a little bit of Josh Allen, and he is that level of physical. He is one of those players that you mentioned looks the part. That much is for sure, but there's good functional use of that body mass as well. He's coming along as a passer, right? That is going to be what unlocks what level of player he becomes, right? This was a comment, not a question, but a comment from our buddy Ian Kenyon, who noted that people are going to make the Anthony Richardson comparison for LaNorris Sellers, but he's much more refined as a passer already than Richardson was at Florida. There's legitimate quarterback stuff on tape. I agree. It's way further along than Anthony Richardson. It's still got to come along a little bit more, Mel. This is not yet the most refined of the 5 passers that we are going to be talking about. But if you're banking on upside, and we know that during the NFL draft, teams will trade production for upside, right? See, Shamar Stewart, 17th overall, 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons, still goes ahead of guys who had pristine college careers with lots and lots of sacks. LaNorris Sellers is the upside pick. He just also, by the end of this upcoming season, Mel, might have a full year of refined, legit passing with that crazy rushing upside too.
Yeah, last thing I'll say about LaNorris Sellers, he needs Nick Harbor. Nick Harbor is a multi-talented, you talk about skilled, freakish talent, can do it all. Nick Harbor is primed for a great year. He talks about how he wants to be at that elite level. If he is, and he's that go-to guy who's uncoverable for LaNorris Sellers, just throw it up and Nick Harbor will go get it. That's going to be a key to whether he develops into the kind of quarterback we think he could be. Maybe a top 5 pick. Nick Harbor will be pivotal in terms of that happening.
Nick Harbor, man, that is Bruce Feldman. You've referenced the freak list previously, Mel, and Nick Harbor was once again number 1, right? I believe he was number 1 for the second.
He was 3, I think, this year. So
okay,
1, 3, somewhere in there. But
so
when you're 3 straight years in the top 4, top 5 overall, and number 1 the first 2 years we even played it down of college football, it tells you how like I say, skilled Nick Harbor is. And he seems like he's got the mindset this year to take that game up several notches from where we've seen it up to this point.
Nobody, I think, has a better chance to make a huge leap this year because he's a big ball of clay right now. But there is plenty of upside given that freakish athletic traits. All right, Mel, at quarterback 3, we go our separate ways here. And by the way, that's fine. Like, again, I see who your number 3 is, Mel, and I get some of it. I'm not quite at the same point yet, but tell me who your 3rd-ranked quarterback is at this time.
It's Drew Allar, quarterback, Penn State, and I look at a guy who we talk about LaNorris Sellers looks the part. So does Drew Allar. Drew Allar has gotten bigger, stronger to that frame that you talked about for Arch Manning. He needed to add a little strength to that frame and pounds to that frame. He has. Drew Allar now went back for this final year. Could have come out and probably been a 1st or 2nd round pick, right? By the time we would have gotten to late April, who knows what would have happened in terms of the buildup, because what you do on the field is secondary to how you test and how you interview and how you do at the combine and the pro day. We saw that out with Shedeur Sanders, right? Where it didn't go Shedor's way and he ended up being a 5th round pick. Drew Allar could have moved up, I think. And I think he's ready now. 2nd year in this offense, 2nd year, and much better receivers. Now you say, well, Tyler Warren's great. Tyler Warren was his go-to guy. He had over 100 catches, right?
Yeah.
The receivers weren't getting it done. They weren't getting separation.
Yep.
Hiron Hudson comes from USC. Devontae Ross comes from Troy. Trevor Pena comes from Syracuse, right? You got the freshman in there. You got another kid, all right, who's in that mix. Liam Clifford, who has been there and has done that. Good player, right? Yeah. You got Dinkins at tight end. You got Luke Reynolds at tight end. You got an offensive line that goes 8-9 deep. Both running backs, Singleton and Allen, are back. This sets up for Drew Allar doing phenomenal things for a Penn State team. With Drew Allar, quarterback, we already talked about Arch Manning, right?
Yep.
There's 3 teams I believe can win a national title.
Okay.
Texas,
yep.
Penn State.
Yep.
I had Michigan, I had Ohio State. Penn State, to me, is going to be Big Ten 3 straight years. These 5 guys, the 2 running backs in Allar, and then Durant, defensive tackle, and Denai Dennis Sutton, defensive end, all went back to win a national title. It could have gone to the NFL. They came back. What did Ohio State's kids do? It was more than 5. It was like 10 or 11. They went back to win a national title, and they did it. Well, Penn State's kids who went back with that distinct point of view to say, hey, we know what we have to do. We're back. We got a defensive coordinator now, right? And Jim Knowles, who's helping out the offense because he's saying to them, it's collaborative, they say, right? I'm going to tell the offense what we saw, what we didn't see, and things you could have done or should have done or didn't do enough of. That collaborative effort with Jim Knowles, Klubnik, the offensive coordinator, second year with him, I think will make Drew Allar the quarterback we've all expected him to be. Think about it. Last 4 games, 3 playoffs, and the Big Ten championship game, he wasn't over 59%.
Yep.
Receivers weren't a factor. You can't throw to guys that aren't open or you're going to get balls picked off. And then we're saying he's throwing all these interceptions. Drew Allar did the best he could with a receiving core that wasn't up to par. This receiving core with the guys I mentioned, Hudson, Ross, and Pena, Reynolds, and Dinkins, with already having Clifford, the 2 running backs, Drew Allar, everything sets up for Drew Allar to be, I think, off the charts this year.
Yeah, Mel, this is a projection, right? Because I think up to this point, you would agree. I think you've kind of acknowledged already that it hasn't been to the level that some of the boxes that Drew Allar checks suggest it should be, right? He is gigantic. He's 6'5". He's got this great frame. He's a good athlete. This is not to be confused with Josh Allen level athleticism, but he's not a statue in the pocket, right? For me, and Drew was better last year. You know, he had some moments that definitely made you understand why there was a lot of hype surrounding him coming to Penn State. As a matter of fact, Mel, I remember distinctly late in the season last year with this very pedestrian 2025 quarterback class having largely taken shape, that I thought that if Drew Allar took Penn State to the national championship game, he would declare for the draft and be the number 2 pick in the draft this past year, going to the Cleveland Browns, because again, the bar for him to clear was much lower than what it will be this year. The tools are there to be a really good player. So what do I want to see more of? Because Drew Allar did not make my top 5. I want to see him play with much more pace in the pocket, right? There are just times where I feel like it's just a little too meticulous and not sped up enough. And he's a good athlete, but not a freakish athlete where, hey, when things break down or if he comes under duress because he doesn't operate fast enough, he can pull a LaNorris Sellers and break contain. And next thing you know, he's off to the races for a 15-yard scramble for a first down. More consistent with his accuracy as well. The upside, though, for Drew Allar, very, very high. You want my quarterback 3?
Oh, yeah. Drew Allar's not in your top 5, which shocks me, Field. But, okay, who's QB 3 for you?
Okay, but there's some interesting debates here, Mel. My quarterback 3 is Cade Klubnik from Clemson.
Oh, okay.
Cade, who is...
Matt Miller hadn't going number 1 in a mock I saw, so you guys are similar. I'm not there yet. Clemson was one of the teams, I think, of the 3 teams that can win a national title. But go ahead, Field.
They're loaded up.
Klubnik is 3 on your list. He's not in my top 5.
Yeah, I mean, they are loaded up is Cade Klubnik. So is Clemson, I should say. They've got talent on both sides of the ball. They've got high-level talent. You know, obviously, they've got Peter Woods amongst, TJ Parker amongst the best defensive prospects in the entire draft already. But Cade Klubnik, guy's got experience, past couple of years starting at Clemson, returned for a final season as well. Another guy who is a dual threat. He had 7 rushing touchdowns last season to go along with his 36 passing touchdowns. He had 6 interceptions, completed 63% of his passes, so nothing to blow you away here, Mel. He's different than these guys that we have talked about so far, right? I don't know this. I haven't seen all these guys line up next to each other, but if you lined up certainly LaNorris Sellers and then Drew Allar and then Cade Klubnik, it would be the old one of these things does not look like the other because Cade Klubnik is much more moderately sized compared to these guys. He's a good athlete as well, can do some stuff as a dual threat runner. I think the accuracy is better than that completion percentage suggests here, Mel. I think it's better. He's a good processor, got a lot of experience, which I like as well. So Cade may not have the same level of upside as some of the guys that we have discussed so far, but I think he has more refinement than a guy like Drew Allar to this point in his career.
Yeah, as 7 quarterbacks, like I say, if you take Arch out of the equation, we assume he's going back. But of those other 6, anybody could be the number 1 quarterback if Arch goes back, or the number 2 quarterback if Arch comes out.
Yeah.
Klubnik's one of those guys. So you can't have them all in the top 5 because
Yeah.
there's 7 guys to choose from. Klubnik, to me, you said it. He doesn't have the howitzer for an arm, but you don't need that. I want to see him keep building on the improvement he showed last year, and he did improve markedly. I think when you look at where Cade Klubnik is from an athletic standpoint, top notch. He can beat you with his legs, the RPOs, the confidence level of Cade. Now, I think the fact that Dabo, and he talked about this, the loyalty that Dabo Swinney showed to him, and a lot of these other guys as well, they're doing it the old school way. They're doing like the Dodgers with Albuquerque, right?
Yeah.
Bringing up the homegrown guys when you had Say, Russell, Lopes, and Yeager catching, and Garvey at first base, and you had all the guys. They were all coming up from Albuquerque. I was a big Dodger fan back in the day. But Clemson's doing it that way. They're saying, okay, we got Will Hell coming in as a defensive end. We're going to pick a guy here or there out of the portal, but we're going with our homegrown recruits that we developed. We built the culture in that locker room. You know who your guy is next to you. You've been with them 2, 3, 4 years. Is that going to lead to a national title for Clemson, right? Yeah. That's one of those 3. I got it as right now. Texas, Penn State, Clemson. One of those 3 wins a national title. I think 2 of those 3 play for a national title, and they all have the quarterback. Yeah. Penn State's got Allar, Klubnik at Clemson, Matt Manning at Texas. This kid, Klubnik, you like him right now at 3. Yeah. I have him right off the 5, but certainly if he has the kind of year and builds on what we saw last year, Field, you're going to be proven to be right.
So we're actually in lockstep at quarterback 4 and 5 here, Mel. So let's move to number 4, guy who really broke out last season, Sam Leavitt, quarterback from Arizona State. And we talked, the first show, I believe it was, about Sam Leavitt and some of the stuff that we liked. One of the traits that you and I both shared that we liked about Sam Leavitt was moxie, right? And I think it's one of those, I think it's a term, Mel, that sometimes we just use it a little bit too liberally because it's hard to disprove that a player has moxie. But he has moxie, right? Like, he kept Arizona State in some gigantic games last season. And I mentioned during that episode that, like, Arizona State may not have quite the same level of talent that some of the college football foes they faced last year will again, Texas, Ohio State, etc. But they got some good pieces around him, no doubt, for sure, including a potential, top 30 to 40 pick at wide receiver. Sam Leavitt's got good accuracy. He's a really, really intriguing scrambler. That, to me, was something that, really caught my eyes when watching him, is the capacity to make something out of nothing, but not something out of nothing, Mel, where it was break pressure and run. It was break pressure, buy time, and innovate, throw the football down the field. So the combination of good enough arm strength, good athletic ability, good experience, good vision, good moxie, all has me thinking that if things go right again this year for Arizona State, not only will they have a chance to play for the college football playoff once again, but also that he'll be one of the first 10 or so players taken in next year's draft.
Yeah, you talk about, we do comps. Matt Miller's the comp king, right? How about Baker Mayfield? We talk about the height, doesn't have the ideal height, doesn't matter now, but he's not 6'4", and he has that toughness. And he has, as you say, the word moxie is exactly right. His kid, I think Kenny Dillingham, you talk about the expectations last year. We talk about the hunter, now the hunted, right? A little bit different situation with Arizona State. Last 2 games of the year, most important games, 1-1, lost 1. They didn't have Jordan Tyson. He was hurt. An outstanding wide receiver who could be a first-round pick out with the shoulder. So, Cam Scatterboot was great. He's moved on. Now the expectations are through the roof, but you don't have your elite running back. Jordan Tyson's coming off the injury, should be phenomenal. I think Sam Leavitt is going to be now in the spotlight. How does he respond? Last year, he caught the nation by storm. Yes. Arizona State as a whole did, right? Yep. Expectation, they were way down in the Big 12. Yeah, they rose up, and they're surprising everybody. And Sam Leavitt's getting it done. I love the footwork. Yeah. I love the way he goes about his business. Yeah. Okay. He is all about football. All about football. A lot of distraction there going on with that college football quarterbacks, right? He is solely focused on one thing. That's getting better and leading his football team. And they all know Sam Leavitt's the guy. So it's going to be fun to see a 20-year-old quarterback like Sam Leavitt, what he does in year 2. And he's a kid. He could go back. Of course. Things don't go perfectly. Go back for another year. But what we saw last year, and I think the Baker Mayfield comp is real. I like what I've seen so far of Sam Leavitt. I like him a lot. That
Baker Mayfield comp. I've heard Bo Nix as well. Maybe not quite as sudden as Bo was, but Baker makes some sense to me. And part of Baker's appeal, of course, coming out was that moxie, right? So, by the way, Jordan Tyson, Jalen Tyson brothers who might be first-round picks just a couple of years apart in the NBA and the NFL. That would be very cool. Last quarterback in our top 5, Mel, is actually shared. And you and I talked about Fernando Mendoza previously as well, at Cal, now at Indiana. Mendoza is a Miami kid who went across the country. Now he goes to the Midwest. And Mel, last year, 69% of his passes he completed, a little over 3,000 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, a pair of rushing touchdowns. Not a lot of weaponry there, right? A tight end that we like, but not a whole lot to be excited about surrounding him at Cal. He made a lot out of not a whole lot. And as we know, Indiana taps into that transfer portal very, very well. The Hoosiers could be just as good, if not better, this upcoming season, Mel, because this kid is legit. He's got some serious improv skills, Mel. He can throw from a bunch of different angles. He makes a lot of, and this is going to sound like a very gimmicky term, makes a lot of cool throws, right? He just makes a lot of very confident throws that I'm not sure other quarterbacks would even see. He completes them, does Mendoza. There's some stuff to clean up here, but did a really good job, I thought, of handling pressure and making some throws while under pressure last season. It should be better behind a markedly better offensive line in Indiana. This upside play here is, I think, a real thing.
Yeah, you talk about what he was able to accomplish, getting sacked a lot. The offensive line was Ole block, and Fernando Mendoza took a lot of hits, but he hung in there from a toughness standpoint and being able to hold up and not get hurt, okay? And still make throws with a guy right in his face. He was able to do that. Jade Knott, running back, is at Oklahoma now. He was banged up last year, okay? You mentioned the tight end, Jack Endry. Where's he at? He's at Texas now with Arch Manning, right? But he had him last year, and he was a key guy. He was a key guy, like Tyler Warren was for Drew Allar. Jack Endry was for Fernando Mendoza last year in that Cal offense. What I loved about this kid last year, what he was able to do when things were breaking down around him. The poise, the maturity, the accuracy talked about, the arm strength. He could still beat a defense. He didn't have a ton of rushing yards, but he could beat a defense on that third and long situation with his legs and surprise them. Okay, you're in man coverage and you're not worried about the quarterback. That 3rd and 10 could be a first down with his legs. And I want to see it in Indiana. Coach Sig, right? Kurt Cignetti. He is a quarterback whisperer. JMU, every quarterback, what he did with Rourke last year, outstanding. Surratt's back at wide receiver. Roman Hemby leaves Maryland to go to Indiana to be their running back. The offensive line will give more protection than Cal did. This is one of those things where we want to see it. I put him, Garrett Nussmeier really should be for me, or Cade Klubnik. I just put Mendoza in there. I didn't know what you were going to do. We didn't compare notes before this. I kind of threw Mendoza in there just to take a shot because we'll have a little fun. But this could be Nussmeier, could be Klubnik, Mendoza. We'll see. Again, first year with the offense. He handpicked Indiana because Coach Sig does a great job with quarterbacks. We'll see if he does kind of what Rourke did, which was, again, they were a surprise team last year, Indiana was. They're not surprising anybody this year. So Mendoza comes into a situation a little bit different than Rourke did, who was the underdog. The expectations were low. Nobody knew what they do. All those transfers came in. Aiden Fisher leading that defense. D'Angelo Pons, the great corner. Now everybody is like Arizona State. Okay, Hunter hunted. Now everybody is saying, okay, we're going to get even with Indiana. We're going to get even with Arizona State. We're going to even with Indiana. So Leavitt and Mendoza have a lot more, I think, intensity and people focusing on them more this year than maybe happened last year.
Okay, agreed all the way on that on Mendoza here, Mel. Let's talk through some other quarterbacks that maybe just missed the cut. And we're not going to go through each one of these players extensively here, Mel. We will do so over the course of the season. But I wanted to touch on Garrett Nussmeier because I think if you're watching the show and you've been following along with stuff already for the 2026 draft, or you're just a college football fan, you know a lot about Nuss. And there were some who thought that some who think Nuss could go very high in the first round. Missed the cut for both of us here, Mel. A little bit of news surrounding him recently. He's got chronic tendonitis, it sounds like. It'll be around for a long time. I think I saw in his patella tendon, which is not ideal. So get ready for a long medical conversation surrounding Garrett Nussmeier, probably around late February into March prior to the pre-draft process. Mel, he is the ultimate processor, right? Processor. This guy plays elite between the ears, right? He's the son of a coach who sometimes looks like he is the son of a coach on the field, right? Accuracy is very good. Anticipation is very good. The vision is very good. I just think the physical traits, Mel, are probably not the same level of the guys that we've talked about up to this point, right? Not nearly the same level of athlete. The arm strength isn't the same level at all. This is more of the guy that wins from the pocket than outside of the pocket. We'll see how much of a ceiling there is for Nussmeier. There certainly could be a top 15 player overall ceiling. We've seen quarterbacks who don't necessarily have crazy scrambling ability go very high. The reason why I didn't include him here, Mel, though, is just because I think the players we've discussed so far have a higher ceiling.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Garrett Nussmeier, I thought about certainly putting him in there, and he could have been very easily based on the kind of year he had. People are talking in glowing terms about Garrett and putting him in that elite category. I didn't see that on a consistent basis. Multiple games last year. Was it how many games last year? 4 games where he threw multiple interceptions. Okay, 2 or more interceptions. So game management has to improve just a little bit. The talent around him. It's going to be really interesting with Garrett Nussmeier to see how he deals with a rebuilt offensive line. No Will Campbell, Emory Jones at tackle. No Miles Frazier at guard with Garrett Dellinger, okay? So new look offensive line. New receivers with Barry and Brown, all that speed coming from Kentucky. Nick Anderson, got Aaron Anderson who came on last year. The green kid at tight end's outstanding. A young superstar, only a sophomore. So, but the rebuilt offensive line, how do they allow him the time as a pocket guy to do what he needs to do? Anticipatory throwers, he's right there. He throws with great anticipation. You mentioned Doug Nussmeier, his dad. I scouted him, back in the day. He came out, I believe, was the Heat Shore Trent Dilfer a year. He was in the Trent Dilfer draft. My guy Trent comes to Baltimore and wins a Super Bowl for the Ravens, right? Yeah. He was in that draft. Now he's the offense coordinator in New Orleans. So he's been around football his whole life. This year, though, the expectations are huge. LSU, who they opened with, Fielding? Clemson.
That's right, Clemson. August 30th as well, right?
You got Klubnik and Nussmeier. 2 quarterbacks right there, 5, 6, 7, 2 quarterbacks going head to head. Clemson, a little bit more, I think, consistency, and you know what you're getting on both sides of the ball. LSU, a lot of question marks. A lot of talent, but some question marks, kind of guys thrown into the fire for the first time, where Clemson guys have been there for a period of years. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out victorious in that game, but it'll be a good evaluation game for a lot of NFL scouts and personnel people and GMs to see Klubnik and Nussmeier on the field going toe-to-toe.
Yeah, a lot of pressure, by the way, on LSU coming into this season, Mel. Let's just say that it's fair to say the temperature has been turned up a little bit there. A couple of other names, and I'll just pull for both of our lists here, Mel, because a lot of crossover here. John Mateer from Oklahoma, transfer from Washington State. This guy's fun to watch, really fun.
Fun to watch. I'll just go real quick. Love watching John Mateer. John Mateer can make things happen with his legs. He can slip and slide. Ball placement needs to improve. He was off target a little bit, and he was making receivers work a little too much at times, but he gets the ball out quick. When he's in the open field, defensive back, get ready, because he can make you miss. And he's got a nice arm. He's got that quick. John Mateer is going to be fun to see how he does at Oklahoma, because I liked a lot of what I saw at Washington State last year.
Mel, I know you're not the biggest NBA guy right now currently, but for those out there that watch, think about like J.R. Smith back in the day. Like, never saw a 3 he wasn't willing to take. Occasionally he went like 8 for 11 from 3 and he couldn't be guarded. Other nights he'd go like 2 for 13 from 3, and you're thinking to yourself, like, why are you taking so many shots? Mateer, though, with some refinement there in Norman, could be a big time riser. Other names, Sawyer Robertson from Baylor, another guy who transferred Mississippi State previously, big, raw, but strong arm, a pretty decent athlete as well. Carson Beck, we've talked about plenty, Mel, now at Miami. One of the more interesting prospects for this year, just because the good version of Carson Beck is still a very, very talented player. Let's go take a look at our top 5s. One more time, and I'll just remind people that there was a lot of crossover there, as we had 4 of the same 5 names. Mel, your order was Arch Manning, LaNorris Sellers, Drew Allar, Sam Leavitt, Fernando Mendoza. Mine was Arch Manning, LaNorris Sellers, Cade Klubnik, Sam Leavitt, and then Fernando Mendoza. So we deviated on Allar and also Cade Klubnik, but still a lot of crossover there. All right, so the last portion of today's show here, Mel, is going to be something quick. And I just wanted to throw teams that could be in the quarterback mix next year, Mel, because I think it is important to have a little bit of context of how many teams are realistically shopping for quarterbacks in the draft before you start saying there are 8 guys who could be first-round quarterbacks. If there's only 3 teams that seem like obvious candidates, 8 won't go in the first round. I'm going to give you my list. And I want to know if anything stands out to you and you say to yourself, you're nuts, or if there's somebody you're saying to yourself, how did you not include this team? Here is my list, and it's not really in any order whatsoever. The Browns, who, of course, by the way, have an extra first-round pick, courtesy of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Saints, I know they drafted Tyler Shuck, 40th overall this past year, but still, if they have a top pick, they'll be in the quarterback market. The Jets, Justin Fields' contract is for 2 years, but honestly, as crazy as it may seem to say that somebody making $20 million per year can be sort of like middle of the road at best quarterback money, That's the way it works in the NFL. You could walk away from that contract after this. The Colts, who might have no quarterback on their roster, but Anthony Richardson is in a huge pivotal year, Mel. And of course, Daniel Jones is on a 1-year contract and up and down. Finally, the Rams, who I included because as you and I are having this conversation here, Mel, Matthew Stafford's back is still bad, and they have a first-round pick courtesy of the Atlanta Falcons. Anything stand out to you from that list?
I get to see how these young quarterbacks do. They don't have to be a first-round pick to be a great quarterback in this league. I mean, a lot of them are, but it doesn't mean you have to be, okay? Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick, and I can list all the names going to Brady as the 6th, but Shedeur Sanders in New Orleans, Shedeur Sanders right now in Cleveland, New Orleans with Tyler Shuck. How did those 2 young quarterbacks do? They got off to a nice start. Shedeur did. Shuck had some nice throws, had the pick 6 they gave up to the Chargers, but the bottom line is Shuck's a 2nd-round pick who they seem to like and really have. Louis Riddick loved them. We were a little less than that. But the bottom line is Tyler Shuck's in New Orleans and Shedeur Sanders is in Cleveland. And Dylan Gabriel was a 3rd-round pick in Cleveland. And Justin Fields had a nice start to the preseason after adjusting to a new offense and new players. Justin Fields can't be in the same offense 2 years in a row. It's just against the rules, Field. Justin Fields can never be in the same offense 2 years in a row. But hopefully he will be with the Jets. So for people to say, he didn't look good in training camp, come on. What do you expect? So let's see how he does. Indianapolis, you said, is Richardson, who got injured against the Ravens with the pinky finger injury, or Daniel Jones the guy? How about Pittsburgh? Did you mention Pittsburgh?
Ooh, I did not. That was a bad
Where are they going to be? They drafted Will Howard late.
Wow.
Okay, passed on Shedeur, then took Howard later.
Yep.
You got Aaron. Where's in this division with Lamar and Burrow, and we'll see what Shedeur and Gabriel do in Cleveland. Pittsburgh more so than those teams. They don't have that. Maybe Will Howard, but they don't have that guy, and they're in a division in the AFC with all these great quarterbacks. So I think Pittsburgh's a team to watch. And 2 quarterbacks we want to see. Kyler Murray's got to get it done in Arizona.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence has to get it done in Jacksonville. And then Gino's, 35 years of age with Las Vegas. Pete Carroll loves them, right? We thought they'd take a quarterback last year. They took one late this year, North Dakota State kid. What do? We thought they'd maybe take Shore. They didn't. So Las Vegas will be interesting to watch when they look at the quarterback of the future. When did they do that? But I think Pittsburgh, to me, is a team I watch very closely. I was really shocked that they didn't go quarterback earlier, especially Shedeur being there time and time again. But they did get Will Howard. We'll see what happens with Aaron. But I'd add them to the list if I were looking at teams for next year. Like I said, these young quarterbacks, these teams could be fine. And if Arch goes back, are you going? You don't love Allar, right? We're talking about 6 quarterbacks could be number 1 if Arch goes back. We don't know what Sellers is going to build on last year, the end of last year, when the first part of last year he wasn't great. We don't know what these quarterbacks are going to be. These teams already have guys that they seem to really like and have shown really good promise in training camp. Okay, what happens? Do they play enough internally at the end of this year? Do they feel, hey, whether it's Shedeur or Gabriel, we got our guy. We have our guy. Justin Fields emerges. Hey, he's a young quarterback. He's mid-20s. He ain't going anywhere. Great dual threat quarterback potentially, right? Or does he just not get it done as a passer? We got to see how this plays out because there could be a surprise team or two we haven't talked about, but certainly Pittsburgh will be that team for me, Phil.
Yeah, Mel, good call right there. And by the way, anything can change with these teams. For all, who knows, Mel? There are teams that I didn't even think about for 1 second that could be in the quarterback market this upcoming offseason. That's how this stuff works. Just using the information we have right now. I think those 5 plus the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm glad you included them, 6 are all logical teams based off of the information we have in middle of August of 2025 that could be looking for a quarterback in the middle, late April of 2026. And by the way, while I'm not yet sold on Drew Allar, I do have a mock draft coming out next week, Mel, that might include him in the first round. This is what we call, what we call that, Mel? We call that playing both sides of the fence right there. Because when you do that, you're never wrong. That much is for sure. All right, that was a lot of ground covered here, Mel. That was a lot of fun, too. Can you believe that we're just about 2.5 weeks away from college football? I cannot wait for it, Mel. But great show, as always, with you, my friend. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you, though, quickly. Saw a little Orange Crush out there over the weekend.
Did you?
Scouting breakdown? Well, I saw you were out there. Well, no, I saw it from you on your Instagram. I know you're a big Instagram guy.
Yeah, we got over to St. Michael's, got over to Foxy's, #1 on the big board.
Okay.
Doc House is closing the ground. Jody Schultz, former linebacker with the Philadelphia Eagles and East Carolina Pirates. Jody's a great friend. Jody's got the Doc House going strong down here on Kent Island, right there, ready to maybe be that new #1. But Foxy's, I think, hey, not a better Orange Crush out there than Foxy's. There's other great places as well. But yeah, out there enjoying a few few orange crushes this past weekend, Fielding. We'll continue to do that up until week 0.
Yeah, we only have so much time left to enjoy those orange crushes, Mel. So I'm glad you are doing so, my friend. All right, for Mel, I am Field. We'll be back again next week. I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think we're breaking down my mock draft. It's mock draft. I'm calling it negative 1.0, baby. Negative 1.0.
How about mock draft 0? How about mock draft 0?
Mock draft 0. We're doing the mock draft next week. We can't wait. We're talking to you guys soon. Have a great week. We'll talk to you then. For Mel, I'm Field. See ya.